What's good, y'all? Welcome to episode 4 of the SpectreVerse Podcast. I am your host, JariSpectre, aka Spectre, aka Jaden Mercer, and this right here is none other than the SpectreVerse. Thank you all once again for joining me on this Wednesday, wherever you may be listening or watching from. And man, oh man, we got a lot to talk about, a lot of different topics that we're going to be covering on today's episode of the SpectreVerse Podcast. We're going to be talking NBA a little bit. We're going to talk about the trade deadline that happened this past week. We'll talk about some of the major trades that went down, some of the teams, the players, just a bunch of different changes going on within the NBA season with that trade deadline. A lot of rumors, especially regarding Giannis on what his future looks like. Obviously, he ain't going anywhere anytime soon, but we're going to be covering the people that were traded away and what those teams' futures look like. We're going to be talking music. We're going to talk J. Cole and the fall off that he dropped this past Friday. I was able to give it 3 solid listens over the weekend, and I will give my thoughts and opinions on the fall off. We're going to be talking Super Bowl. Super Bowl Sunday was this past Sunday. We got new Super Bowl champions in the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going to talk about the game, talk about things that I noticed while watching the game. We'll briefly touch on the halftime show, a very opinionated halftime show. And then also we're going to be talking the world of pro wrestling as well, as we always do. A lot of breaking news, a lot of sudden changes going on in the world of wrestling, especially leading to the Elimination Chamber, as well as on the road to WrestleMania. So that is what we are going to be covering on today's episode. I want to thank you guys once again for joining me on this Wednesday. If you are new here, feel free to follow me on all social media platforms at JariSpectre on Twitter, at JariSpectre on Instagram. You guys can also go ahead and follow the SpectreVerse on Twitter as well, at the SpectreVerse. You guys can follow my wrestling journey on Facebook at Jaden Mercer Pro. Obviously, it's been very quiet considering my ACL injury that I suffered this past year. We're getting very, very close to getting the green light, which is great. And I will keep you guys covered specifically only on this show in regards to that. Everywhere else, it will be a secret. And then also feel free to follow the SpectreVerse on Facebook as well, at the SpectreVerse. Anytime I go live, any updates, anytime I drop a podcast, all of that stuff will be on the Facebook and the Twitter page. So if you guys really like what you see, feel free to follow those pages as well. And last but certainly not least, hit that subscribe button down below. Turn on that bell for notifications. Feel free to like this video if you enjoy what you see. And let's get some conversation going on in the comments. It's been a lot to talk about, a lot of different opinions. And I'm curious to see what you guys think of all these things. So feel free to drop your thoughts down in the comments. First things first, the NBA trade deadline. Over the past week, the NBA trade deadline went down. It was specifically February 5th, I believe, was the last day of the trade deadline. I got all of the trades that went down right here on my phone. So I will kind of just rattle off a few of the major ones that happened. We'll kind of discuss what my thoughts and opinions are on those. There was a big 3-way trade that went down between the Mavericks, the Hornets, and the Wizards. The Charlotte Hornets ended up getting Malachi Branham from the Wizards. The Mavericks ended up receiving Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Tyus Jones, and Marvin Bagley from the Wizards, as well as a 2026 first-round pick from the Thunder, a 2030 first-round pick from the Golden State Warriors, and 3 future second-round picks from the Wizards. And then the Wizards ended up getting Anthony Davis, Jaden Hardy, D'Angelo Russell, and Dante Exum. As far as the Wizards go, considering they're not a very, very good team, even just adding some star power in Anthony Davis, I don't feel like it's going to be enough. Strictly just because how injury prone and made of glass Anthony Davis is. He's still a very good player, but I don't think he will ever fully reach the heights that he once did. I feel like he's definitely past his prime more now than he was before. So I don't think it's really going to help the Wizards all that much. I feel like the Mavericks, they got some good, solid role players in this trade. And I feel like, especially long term, it's going to help them. I know Mavericks fans right now are kicking themselves, though, about how the upper management have handled the Luka Doncic trade and now getting all this stuff in return. If they're going for a full rebuild that can end up turning into something like the Golden State Warriors this past decade, or even what the Thunder did, then kudos to them for seeing the vision. But if they don't pick the right players to fit their system, then it's going to be all for nothing. And I genuinely do feel bad for Mavericks fans. And then the Hornets, they got a good player. That's really all I got on that. Then we have a trade between the Warriors and the Atlanta Hawks. The Warriors ended up getting Kristaps Porzingis, which I feel like is actually a pretty solid pickup for the Warriors. They definitely need some more height and somebody who can also help space the floor for Steph Curry and Draymond Green. And I feel like that's a good player to have. They are giving up Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield for it. So a reasonable trade, yes. Is it the best trade in the world? I mean, for what you're getting versus what you're giving up, I guess. So I'm curious to see how Porzingis rolls with that offense. It's going to be very, very interesting to say the least. The Warriors will be fine. It's the Warriors. They got the greatest shooter God has ever created in Steph Curry. They'll always be at least in the conversation. Will they make it very far in the playoffs? That is to be seen. I genuinely have no idea. The Pacers ended up trading with the Clippers. Indiana receives Zubac and Kobe Brown, and the Clippers end up getting Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, and then 2026 first round pick, 2029 first round pick, and 2028 second round pick. Overall, I feel like it's a very good trade. I know Indiana needs some more height from giving up Miles Turner. They need a really solid center, and Zubac is definitely a very solid center. So I feel like both teams are going to be happy with those. One of the other big trades that happened, we had the Boston Celtics and the Chicago Bulls. The Celtics ended up getting Vucevic and a 2027 second round pick for Anthony Simmons and a 2026 second round pick. I am shocked that the Bulls traded away Vucevic, considering how good he actually is still at his age. And I feel like the Boston Celtics just got that much stronger, even with Jason Tatum still being out. So I don't know how the Celtics do it, but they always find a way to pull off these ridiculous trades. Then we had a really big mega trade between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Los Angeles Clippers. The Cleveland Cavaliers ended up getting James Harden, and the Clippers ended up then getting Darius Garland and future second round pick. That was the biggest trade that went down during the trade deadline. I will be completely honest. I'm shocked that the Cavs gave up Garland, because he is a very, very good player, a very solid role player, and he is an all-star caliber player. And you are in return expecting prime James Harden. Will that consistently, and that is the key word, consistently, be the case? I don't know. Me personally, I would not have made that trade. I do like Harden, but I feel like he's been so inconsistent and he's been bouncing around from all these different teams. And he shows glimpses that he still can ball like he did back in 2012, 2013, that stretch. But I don't know. That one is a toss-up for me, honestly. And that honestly covers all the trade deadline. There wasn't a whole lot of noise. There were some noticeable players that got traded. And I'm genuinely curious to see how these playoff teams, per se, end up actually producing with these trades. Next, we got J. Cole and the fall off. I will be completely honest with you. I wasn't a huge J. Cole guy until Forest Hills Drive. That was the album that really put me on to his music. And I went back and I listened to all of his old stuff, plus his new stuff. I definitely feel like he is, in fact, top 3. Everybody knows this in the rap community, but I genuinely feel like he's not even 3. Drake, I feel like, is number 3. And then it is neck and neck who you want to go with number 1 and number 2 with Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole. And honestly, this album, once again, proves how good J. Cole actually wants to be when he truly wants to be. This album, to me, it was more for himself than it was for the fans, which is great because music is art, and art is very, very subjective. And I feel like a lot of the people that listen to it, their expectations of him are so high, and rightfully so. But at the end of the day, they got to realize, like, this album was made by J. Cole for J. Cole, just to prove to himself that he can still do this shit at a very high level. And honestly, I agree. I thought this was an amazing album from start to finish. I mean, there's definitely some songs that are skippable. There's some songs that are very forgettable. But there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of good songs on this album. And my honest overall rating, out of a scale of 1 to 10, I would give it an 8. Maybe 7.5 at the bare minimum. But it felt like it was a very personal album, which I appreciated, like I said. Lyrically, it was exactly what I expected, and it was perfect. There were a lot of storytelling with the lyrics, and I'll be honest with the production on this album. It actually wasn't as bad as I was anticipating it to be. I know J. Cole's albums always get a lot of criticism with how the production is. And I know J. Cole does a lot of his own production. And so it's just like you almost kind of got to give him grace, at least a little bit. But honestly, I feel like the production was a lot better than I was anticipating it to be. It's still not great, but it was definitely better than I anticipated it to be. And like I said, the storytelling in some of these songs were just chef's kiss. So overall, Fall Off, I thoroughly enjoy. There was a lot that I added to playlists, and I was very, very happy because it feels like it's been a very, very long time since I've been able to actually download a full rap album to my phone and not feel sorry about it. So this was definitely a nice change of pace, to say the least. Super Bowl 60. Super Bowl 60 happened this past Sunday, and the final score ended up being 29-13. Seattle Seahawks are your new Super Bowl champions, which I predicted. However, I was completely off by the score. I thought it was going to be a close affair, which honestly, for the most part of the game, it actually was fairly close. Like, we start in the first quarter, it was a very defensive game. I will give credit where credit is due. The Patriots showed their ass off when it came to the defensive side of the ball. They weren't able to actually get to Sam Darnold as much as I was anticipating, but their secondary played their asses off. There was a lot of guys out there that really made some big-time plays, and they held Seattle to very low score, at least for the first 3 quarters. So I will give credit where credit is due. That secondary is very solid. Second quarter, like I said, it was still a very defensive game. But Seattle started looking like they were taking control of the game. The Pats really just couldn't get anything going on offense. And that really, I feel like, is what boils down to why the game went the way it did. You look back at some of the plays that happened in the Super Bowl, and it's like Drake May's back there. And anytime they would like run the ball, either it would be a nice gain or it would get stuffed immediately. Well, that's what you get when you're going against a third-ranked defense, especially against the run. And so that really had to force Drake May to throw the ball. But anytime he would drop back to pass, and you see the left tackle get bullied every single play. You see the right guard trying his ass off to just make a block, and he was just getting pushed back. The left tackle and the left guard, and then partially the center. That whole left side of their offensive line looked bad. And that is why it seemed like Drake May just was all out of sorts, because they just couldn't keep him protected. He couldn't sit in the pocket to make these throws. And even when he did, he started feeling the pressure, and then he starts forcing the ball. And then that's where you get your bad interceptions. You get your strip sack fumbles. You get just sloppy football, especially on offense. But that is also kudos to Seattle's defense. Seattle's defense, I mean, they gave them the nickname the Dark Side for a reason. They are a very scary group of killers on that defense. You got a few big names, but overall, they worked like a cohesive unit, and that is like the core foundation of what you want your defense to be. You don't need all the big names in the world, but you just need guys that can buy into the system. And on top of that, play their ass off, make plays when you need to. And they did a phenomenal job. I will give it to them. Third quarter, still such a defensive game. It was like 12-0 at this point. Jason Meyer had all the points. He actually had the record for the most field goals in a Super Bowl game. And Seattle's offense was really starting to take over. Drake May had a fumble, which caused a turnover. And then the fourth quarter is where it really started to pick up. Sam Darnold threw a touchdown to A.J. Barner, which made it 19-0. Stephon Diggs got into a fight with one of the DBs, but there were no flags thrown, so nobody got ejected. Drake May then threw two beautiful passes, one for a touchdown to make it 19-7. Drake May then threw a really, really bad interception, which led to a field goal. So now it was 22-7. And at this point, the game was pretty much over. You only had like 6 minutes left in the game. And he got drilled while dropping back to pass, which led to a pick six. And that is what sealed the deal. The Seattle Seahawks, overall, my thoughts, like I said, if Drake May would have been protected, I feel like this game would have been a little closer. And on top of that, you got to keep in mind, this was his third year as a starting quarterback. So like, he's a very, very young quarterback. He's 23 years old. Like, he's good. He'll be fine. He'll clean up the mistakes, but they need to get him a better offensive line. They need to give him some help out there. The Seattle Seahawks, they look great. Sam Darnold played a hell of a game. No turnovers. Played a very, very conservative and a very smart game, which kudos to Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald. They coached their ass off. Both teams deserved to be there. However, Seattle was overall, from defense, offense, special teams, they were the best team, and they deserved that championship. It also makes you wonder, as a Broncos fan, I feel for you, but if Bo Nix never fractures his ankle, this conversation could be completely different. Like, people like to knock on the Broncos and Bo Nix, but honestly, if Bo never gets hurt, I feel like it's Seattle versus Denver in the Super Bowl, and things, I wouldn't say would have a different outcome, but that game would have been a whole hell of a lot more different. That's all I'm going to say on that. I'll be honest, the halftime show, I was very I don't even know the way I would describe it. Like, the production side of it looked fantastic. It looked very well produced. Obviously, it's the NFL, so just like WrestleMania in a sense, everything is larger than life. Figure out the big brand spectacle that is the halftime show. But as far as like Bad Bunny, he did a great job. I mean, he's the number one artist in the world, most streamed artist, I believe, as well, outside of like Taylor Swift, if I'm not mistaken. Like, he did great. But the problem I've been seeing online is I couldn't understand a word that he said. And I'll be completely honest, I don't know a whole lot of Spanish, so I have no idea what he said. He could have been saying the most fucked up things in the world, and I would have had no idea. And I think that is partially because the US have been so conditioned to have like the people that they want to perform at the halftime show. But like WWE did years ago, the NFL is trying to go global. They're not trying to just be the United States. All the teams are still going to be in the US, but they're trying to take their brand global. And when you think global, you got to, cover a bunch of different demographics. You got to cover a bunch of different age groups. You got to make everything bigger and reach all of these people that you weren't able to reach before. That's why they've been going overseas for games. Obviously, we've been seeing an uptick. I can only guarantee next season there's going to be even more overseas games. So that's why they chose Bad Bunny for this position. It's not because, we like or dislike so-and-so, whatever the case. It's because they're trying to go global. And if you can't understand that, that's on you. And no knock to you. I completely understand people's opinions and thoughts as far as like, it should have been this person. Or even like Kid Rock and how he had an alternative halftime show, which I also did tune into, and I thought it was really good. I mean, it's not anything crazy. It's just because it's just like some people are very firm on what they want, and they will go out of their way to make sure they get what they want. Either way, both halftime shows, they were fine. I just feel like the Bad Bunny one, although it reached a bigger audience, I feel like there was a huge disconnect between like the hardcore fan base of the NFL with it. But at the same time, I understand why they did it. So I can't really complain too much. But those are just my thoughts on the halftime show and the Super Bowl. Overall, I'll be completely honest. I'm a huge defense guy. Although defensive games can be very boring to some people, and I will be completely honest, I was getting a little bored too. But it shows the true skill it takes to be a good defensive player in the NFL. And if you can understand like what the offense is going through or what the defense is going through and what you're seeing, that's the part that made it sweet to me, because I used to play football. Obviously not even close to that level, but like you understand those small fundamentals. You understand the techniques, you understand the schemes, why they're doing certain things. So like that part of it, I appreciated, because it honestly did feel like a chess match, which is great. And like I said, that's kudos to the coaches. Overall, I was very, very thoroughly enjoyed with the Super Bowl. I know some people were very like, that Super Bowl sucked, whatever. That's their opinion. But overall, I thought it was fine. And now let's hop into wrestling. We are going to start with AEW Dynamite that happened this past Wednesday. It honestly started with some backstage segments. It was a nice little change of pace. It covered MJF, gave a quick 30-second promo, Brody King, Kenny Omega, Don Callis, Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron, Penelope Ford and Megan Bayne, all just promoting the stuff they got going on right now, which is great, especially for somebody who's like just starting to watch AEW and that doesn't really know what's all going on at the moment. I thought it was great. First match of the night was Death Riders. It was Pac, Danny Garcia, and Jon Moxley versus the Don Callis family, which was Konosuke Takeshita, Josh Alexander, and El Clone. The match was very high speed. It was very electric from start to finish. Like I said last week, I don't know who's the heels and I don't know who's the faces. What the fuck are we doing? Other than just characters being characters, make a babyface team and make a heel team. The fact that like I genuinely don't know who I'm supposed to cheer for makes it hard just as a casual wrestling fan, which I'm not. I'm a full-blown wrestler, so I understand how this shit works. But you're trying to convey that to your audience. You gotta give them someone to cheer for, and you gotta give them someone to boo. Shit just makes sense. And then the one criticism I had of the match was I wish there was more selling. And this is a problem that AEW has all the fucking time. Nobody sells anything, which sucks. But the Don Callis family ended up winning the match. Pretty much just gives them a little more momentum going into Revolution. Renee Paquette was backstage with Swerve, talks about what's next for him now that he's not in the world title picture. And Prince Nana said they are not going anywhere. Then we had a video package for Will Ospreay. I thought the video package was very well produced. It was very well done. And the commentators kept saying all night, they're like, is he coming back soon? We don't know. But we just hope for a nice speedy recovery, which is true because this is a very real injury to a very real person. But if he's not coming back anytime soon, I would say stop promoting it because then it's going to take away from the surprise of him actually when he does come back. So that's just something that they should maybe consider. Next match we had was Orange Cassidy and Toni Storm versus Jordan Oasis and Brittany Brooks. I'm very happy to see Brittany doing well. I was able to meet her in the locker room once when I was wrestling for MAW in Minnesota. Very nice. Also dating Chris Bay. I love Chris Bay. I hope he's doing well with his recovery as well. But this was a glorified squash match. Everybody did really good. They played their parts well. Post-match promo from Orange Cassidy and Toni Storm, who ended up winning the match, calling out Marina Shafir and Wheeler Yuta for next week. Other than all that was going on, I genuinely did not care for this. I have no idea why Toni Storm and Orange Cassidy are teaming up. It just doesn't make sense. Next match we had was Hangman Adam Page versus Mark Davis. Match was very, very solid. Hangman ends up winning with the buckshot. Very well done. Post-match, he calls out Kenny or Andrade for next week in Australia at Grand Slam. And Kenny or Andrade, that is what the main event was. That's why he was calling them out. And we had a Kevin Knight video package that was also very well done. I'm glad he is starting to get a little more spotlight because he is a very, very good wrestler, very underrated wrestler. And if he can get some good character substance, maybe you got something there. But it's AEW. We'll wait and see. And then we had Kenny Omega versus Andrade. This match was fantastic. Obviously, when you got Andrade and Kenny Omega in there, you know you're going to have a fantastic match. Towards the end of the match, Don Callis brought out the screwdriver. Swerve came in to take it away. Kenny went for one winged angel on Andrade. Andrade slipped out, but because all this chaos is going on around, referee had his back turned. Low blow from Andrade. He ended up hitting the DM. 1, 2, 3. Andrade advances in the tournament. Post-match, Swerve Strickland and Kenny Omega are pissed at each other, and they're bickering, and they're pushing each other, potentially setting something up there. We'll have to wait and see. Then we had Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford versus Willow Nightingale and Harley Cameron. This was your very traditional tag team match. Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford pick up the win. I will say I do like the pairing of Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford. I feel like they're a very solid tag team in the women's division. They both blend off of each other very, very well. At least that's how it's portraying on television. So I will give them credit where it's due. I feel like they're doing great. Then we had a Tommaso Ciampa promo backstage, essentially just calling out whoever wants a shot at the TNT title now that he's in AEW. And then he names the TNT title Sylvie, calling back to his time in NXT Black and Gold with Goldie when he held the NXT title. So it was nice to see Sylvie and him. The only question is he going to be doing that exact same shtick? Or is it going to be a little something different? I feel like this has potential to run, but if it's just going to be like the US title where it's just open challenges, then honestly, I do not fucking care. Then we had Jungle Jack Perry versus Ricochet for the national championship. This was a very solid title match. It was a very solid TV match. The Gates of Agony got involved during the finish when Jungle Boy locked in the snare trap and pulled Ricochet to the rope while he was outside. The Young Bucks then came in and made the save. Ricochet then set the title on the second turnbuckle, like he laid the title on top of the padding and then rammed Jungle Boy right into it. And that was the finish. 1, 2, 3. Ricochet retains. Then we had Gabe Kidd and Clark Connors drag Darby Allin in a body bag while driving a car. That was fucking wild. And yeah, I guess that continues the feud for Gabe Kidd and Darby Allin. So I guess that gives Darby something to do while he can do some really crazy shit. And then in the main event, we had a shocker. I talked so much shit about elimination matches, and then they did this. We had MJF versus Brody King in an eliminator match. Right as the bell rings, there's a huge fuck ice chant. And then we had Hangman Adam Page come out and distract MJF immediately after the bell rang. And Brody King just took over from there. It was a squash match. MJF got demolished by Brody King. And I guess that's the best way to make Brody King look strong and give him a title match. But at the same time, beating MJF on regular TV, I don't know if that's the right decision. I don't like having my champions lose just on regular TV matches, even if the title's not on the line. But hey, I guess when you book yourself into a corner, that's what you got to do. And I think they did the best with what they could. And yeah, so now Brody King he gets a title shot at MJF, which I know the match itself is going to be great. Brody King is a great worker. MJF, obviously, he's the champion for a reason. But at the same time, what the fuck are we doing? Let's move over to the WWE side of things. We had SmackDown on Friday. Drew McIntyre came out, and then Cody Rhodes attacked him during his entrance. Just pissed off and angry about what happened at the Rumble, how Drew inserted himself just to eliminate Cody Rhodes. He cut this very angry promo about getting eliminated and talked about how Roman and Punk are in a dick measuring contest and says they didn't call me Raheem for no reason. And the crowd was on fire. They loved it. And that was really about the end of it. Ended up leading to backstage with Cody and Nick Aldis, and Nick's told Cody that there'll be a qualifying match for the Chamber. He can be in it, but he's got to leave for the night. So that was the last we saw of Cody Rhodes. First match of the night we had was Io Sky and Rhea Ripley versus Kiana James and Julia. And this was for the women's tag titles. Io landed very scary on a suicide dive during her comeback, which I'm glad she's okay. But like, she looked like she just dove head first right into the ground. And I was like, Jesus Christ. But it was a fine TV match. Io and Rhea retained their tag titles. Then we had another backstage segment between Ilya and The Miz. Carmelo Hayes interrupts them and says he is the one who calls the shots around here since he is the US champ. And The Miz really didn't take kindly to it, which led to Miz versus Carmelo Hayes. Carmelo Hayes beats The Miz. Mello landed very hard on a flip to the outside. He did it like a tope con hero. And it just, I don't know if his timing was off or whatever the case, but it just did not look very good. And it looked like it sucked. Not just from a visual standpoint, but like I felt for the guy because I've done it before. And that shit, if you don't do it right, it hurts. But it was a very good finish, a very solid match for TV. Like, nothing too crazy there. We had another backstage segment between Tiffany Stratton, and she says that her eyes are on the Chamber. Chelsea Green interrupts her and says she will be the one that qualifies for the Chamber. And then that led to commercial break. You come back from commercial, you get another vignette from Bo Dallas calling out Solo Sikoa and the MFTs for stealing the lantern and the tag titles. And he says, fear shows up when you're all alone. So obviously that feud is far from over. Obviously, they're going to get their payback. They're going to get their lantern back and all will be well in the world. Nothing crazy there. Then we had a triple threat qualifier match for the women's chamber. We had Lash Legend versus Tiffany Stratton versus Chelsea Green. The timing between Lash and Tiffany was off towards the end sequences of the match. That was one thing I noticed. It just seemed like they just weren't in sync. Chelsea Green hit a very nice coast to coast. Nia Jax ended up breaking that up on the outside, helping Lash Legend. The crowd really, really wanted Chelsea Green to win. And I feel like her time will come. If WWE is smart, they will give Chelsea a run. But will that be anytime soon? We will have to wait and see. Or they could just treat her like LA Knight and treat her like garbage. But that also wouldn't shock me either. But Tiffany Stratton beats Chelsea Green and Lash Legend. She hits the prettiest moonsault ever. And now she advances in the women's chamber. We had another backstage segment with Randy Orton asking about how he prepares for his qualifier match. That will be the main event. He said if he beats his two competitors, this will be his 10th Elimination Chamber match in his career, and talks about how much experience he has in that match. Aleister Black interrupts him and says, we just said goodbye to two of the very best, and we're happy to still have Randy, or at least one part of Randy. What that means, I feel like it's just that he's gone soft, but that's neither here or there. It's up to interpretation. Then we had a squash match between Kit Wilson and Oba Femi. Just a guy that we can throw at Oba to make him look strong. And by God, does he look fucking strong. Drew McIntyre then comes out again. He tries to do a promo, which he did at the beginning of the show. He is then attacked by Jacob Fatu. Same scenario as Cody Rhodes. The officials and security pull him off and kick him out of the building. And Nick Aldis, as all this is going on, says, Jacob, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Cody. You will get your match to qualify for the chamber, but you gotta leave. Then we had Shinsuke Nakamura versus Tama Tonga. Match was fine, very sloppy at times, but overall it was not a bad match. Shinsuke was about to line up for the Kinshasa, but Tonga Loa held his foot, and then Tama hit Cutthroat twice. 1, 2, 3. I will say Tama Tonga's been looking pretty strong, and I'm glad they're at least trying to make him more of like a single standout for the MFTs. Because, I mean, if you're just going to make him another tag guy, then you're just losing credibility. But I thought it was fine. I'm not going to complain too much about it. Then we had another backstage segment between the Motor City Machine Guns and Fraxium as they see Johnny Gargano laying on a production crate. And if you look, it's like Johnny's super depressed, just laying there. But then it says NXT in the corner, only hinting that chances are him and Candice are going back to NXT. Or their careers and their contracts might be up and they want to go to AEW. That's another toss-up, that a possibility that could happen. But realistically, I feel like they're just going to go to NXT. That's where they belong. So nothing too crazy there. Liv Morgan came out, and right before she was about to make her decision for Mania, Jade Cargill interrupts her and says if she picks her, she's going to beat her ass. Jordan Grace then comes out and interrupts both of them and says she wants a title shot. And that turned into an impromptu tag match. It was Jordan Grace and Jade Cargill versus Liv Morgan and Raquel. There were a bunch of miscues setting up for the finish. A lot of storytelling between Liv eliminating Raquel, and then Raquel accidentally big booting Liv Morgan in the match. And then obviously the feud between Jordan Grace and Jade Cargill still going on. But Jordan Grace and Jade ended up winning the match. Nothing too crazy. It was just a traditional tag match that tried to advance the stories of both teams in a sense. We had Sami Zayn and Rey Fenix backstage. Rey was trying to boost Sami's spirits after losing in Saudi Arabia. Trick Williams comes out and just talks shit to Sami the entire time. He called Sami Charles Barkley and said he's MJ, essentially. Nick Aldis announced Jade versus Jordynne Grace for the WWE Women's title next week. Drew McIntyre then finally comes out and cuts the promo that he's been wanting to cut all night long and says Cody and Fatu should be banned from the Elimination Chamber after attacking him, and talks about how he destroyed Sami Zayn. He then calls out Roman Reigns and Punk for the promo that was cut this past Monday. And then from there, he pretty much just calls them both insecure with how they're trying to belittle him. And says he's the one that's holding the championship in WWE. Says the one that was held by the Hulk Hogans, the Shawn Michaels, the Triple H's, the Stone Colds, the Rocks, etc., etc. And says he carried the company during the pandemic. This title he has earned. It was a very solid promo. And I mean, you got to try to, at least give a little bit of comeback after what Roman and Punk did with slightly belittling him last time on Raw. So I understand it. Do I think it held up to those expectations? No. But it was fine for what it was. It is going to feel weird like the WWE title is secondary, but that's just how big Roman and Punk are. And there's not much else you can do about that. Then we had our main event. We had Randy Orton versus Solo Sikoa versus Aleister Black qualifying for the Elimination Chamber. This was a very good triple threat match. RKO to Aleister Black. Black rolled out of the ring while Randy was trying to cover him. Solo Sikoa wanted the Samoan Spike and got hit with the RKO out of nowhere. Randy Orton advances to the Elimination Chamber, his 10th ever Elimination Chamber in WWE. So that'll be interesting. I feel like that's the right guy, considering Solo Sikoa he's got his hands full with the Wyatt Six. Aleister Black, you have not built him up enough to qualify for the chamber. I will say though, he looked good tonight. Aleister Black, he held his own. He's a very good wrestler. It's just right now he doesn't have a whole lot of substance. He doesn't got motion like that. So it's kind of hard to rust him into an elimination chamber when there is no momentum behind him. And then last but certainly not least, we have Monday Night Raw that happened last night. Becky Lynch opened the show. She cut a promo that she's sick of the disrespect and the corruption from the Royal Rumble that she addressed. AJ Lee interrupts her and pretty much said she's just here to support Maxine in her match against Natty. Becky said that AJ Lee is ruining her life, which really honestly didn't make sense per the storyline. And AJ said that was a bit dramatic. Becky said she wants a singles match. And AJ said Becky is one of the GOATs, so what will that make her if she beats Becky? And says she has no idea what she's in for. So essentially, it sounds like they're building towards AJ Lee versus Becky at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental title. It'll be fine. I'm not going to complain too much about it. First match of the night, we had the Usos versus the Alpha Academy for the tag titles. The match was honestly nothing special. The Usos looked kind of out of it, like they were just half-assing it. Usos retained their titles with the 1D. Nothing crazy. Liv Morgan comes out and yet again cuts another promo trying to decide who she wants to fight at WrestleMania. Stephanie Vakir comes out and they both trade some very dull insults, and man, I feel bad for Stephanie because it's just ever since she won the title, she hasn't really done much of anything with it. And then on top of that, they changed her fucking music and it sounds god awful. Fucking awful. So with that being said, there was some teasing that Liv Morgan was choosing who she wants to fight at Mania, but nothing substantial sat there. I'm curious to see what the hell they're going to do. This has been the same thing for the past week and a half now. They got to build on something. Then we had Rhea versus Ivy Nile versus Lyra Valkyria for a women's qualifier for the Elimination Chamber. It was a no surprise, no brainer. Rhea Ripley wins. Enough said. Finn Balor came out and cut a promo, said he wants CM Punk and a shot at the world title. CM Punk was out there. There was some war of words. And Adam Pearce finally announced it will be CM Punk versus Finn Balor at the Elimination Chamber for the heavyweight title. That match is going to be good. I'm glad they finally gave Finn Balor something to sink his teeth into because, like I said, for the past how many episodes now, pretty much since episode 1, they need to give Finn Balor the fucking respect that he deserves. Then we had Maxine Dupree versus Natty. And they tried to give a story going into this, but Maxine is just not getting over the way I think they anticipated her getting over. Natty attacked Maxine before the bell even rang and just mollywopped her. Match ended in a no contest. It never even started. AJ Lee then came out and made the save, and Natty ended up running off. Then we had a tag match between Javon Evans and OG Americano versus Rayo and Bravo of the faction of the Americanos. The match was fine. The only highlight was that sick OG cutter that Javon Evans hit. Because you have one of the guys here, Javon's over here, and they both jump, and he catches them in a cutter. It looked beautiful. And nobody was expecting it, but it's just like, outside of that, there was nothing there. Javon Evans and OG Americano win. And then we have our main event. We had Penta versus LA Knight versus Theory for the men's chamber qualifier. It was a solid TV match. The masked hoodie guy that attacked Braun Breaker came out during the match and ended up attacking Theory, hit him with a stomp. At this point now, we're really just boiling it down. We're really just boiling it down to who is the masked man. See a lot of conspiracies, a lot of names being thrown out as to who it is. At this point, it can only be so many people. You got Seth Rollins. That's your number one guy. I saw Adam Pearce could be one of them. I seen LA Knight, but that doesn't make sense considering he was in the match. I saw Grayson Waller with the history between him and Austin Theory. Doable, yes. Is that enough? No. And at that point, it's just like all eyes are pointing to Seth Rollins. But with the news that happened with Braun Breaker, will that even fucking happen anymore? I don't know. But anyways, with the main event, it ended up after Theory got stomped. I mean, like I said, it's got to be Rollins. It just doesn't make sense. But LA Knight ends up winning with the BFT. LA Knight is advancing into the Elimination Chamber. The triple threat match was fine. But that was pretty much Monday Night Raw in a nutshell. I will say WWE programming over the past week and a half has been utterly boring. Other than the Roman and Punk segment, the matches really have not stood out, as well as the storylines building towards the chamber. Like, this is WrestleMania season. And not once, other than that Roman and Punk promo, has it actually felt like WrestleMania season. There are legitimately no huge storylines going on building towards WrestleMania. So, like, they need to kick it into fucking gear if they want people to, like, really be excited for WrestleMania, other than, oh my God, it's WrestleMania. But it's WWE. They ain't gonna fucking do that. So, what does it even matter? And then last but certainly not least on the podcast, we're just gonna cover some brief wrestling news that happened throughout the week. AJ Styles confirms that he is going home. Honestly, I said this when he first retired. He deserves to have his time off now. I did see a report that they're in contract negotiations right now. And if they don't reach an agreement, he is free to listen to any other offers. But if I were AJ Styles, I would just, like, you can't end on a better note than that. I guess if you really want to go and do TNA or AEW, that's always an option. But to me, I feel like it just, if you're going to TNA to retire, I feel like then that's good. But like if you built up this whole thing with Gunther about your career being on the line and he kills it just for you to go to a different company and continue just doesn't fucking make sense. And I feel like AJ knows that. So I'm kind of curious to see what might happen with that. But honestly, if I were AJ, I would just be like, my body of work speaks for itself. I don't need to wrestle anymore. I just want to be I just want to be a dad. And that's it. Speaking of retirements, Big E over this past week officially announced that he is retiring from wrestling. We will never see Big E inside of the squared circle ever again because of his neck injury that he suffered, which I feel bad. But I mean, you look back at his body of work, he was phenomenal. He's doing great now with the WWE just as a commentator for the pre-show panels, post-show panels. Like that fits him very well. He will always have a job there. But it is going to suck not seeing him wrestle anymore. Ricochet also went on a Twitter rant and says how WWE kills the love of the sport for wrestlers. And he started name dropping Shinsuke Nakamura, Finn Balor, and a bunch of other guys, which I will be it pretty much threw the Twitter community into a frenzy. And I will say he has a point. I think the words he was looking for weren't hitting, but I understood the message that he was sending. He has a point. WWE does have a tendency to kill great wrestlers by being in WWE. They have a tendency. Does that always happen? No. But does it happen to great wrestlers, and has it happened? Yeah, absolutely. So I understand what his Twitter rant was, but I feel like he was partially trolling because, I mean, you're talking about WWE. Like, if you're going to burn a bridge and you decide to burn that one, that's a tough look. But I do understand where he was coming from. And I'm not going to fully side with him, but I'll be like, yeah, I understand you. But that's what happened. I mean, that literally had the Twitter wrestling community up in a frenzy for like a good 36 hours, I would say. And then the latest, we had Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker ended up suffering a hernia injury last week on Raw by flipping an announce table, which, I mean, you hear it all the time, and I will say this even as a wrestler. The worst of injuries will happen on the weirdest of things. My torn ACL happened by my entrance, and I was on the top rope holding up a title, and I hopped down and completely tore my ACL. Like, I landed and my knee buckled just during my entrance. And Braun Breaker now has a hernia injury and has to have surgery just by flipping an announce table. And they're saying because of how close it is to WrestleMania, they're saying he might miss WrestleMania, depending on how serious it is, which we've been hearing. Okay, depending what we're getting very different reports that, and it's still coming in to this day. We're hearing, oh, he could be out for like 3 to 6 months. And then we're hearing, oh, he could also be out for like 12 weeks. We don't really know. It's like, okay, well, somebody gotta at least address what the time frame looks like. Someone's got to address what the time frame looks like to get everybody to kind of just shut up about it. But in all actuality, I do feel sorry. I wish him a very speedy recovery. That sucks, especially around WrestleMania and the push that you're getting. And will he reach the heights that he was on when he comes back? I say yes, he will. I feel like, I wouldn't say his spot is secured, but he's definitely going to come back better than ever. And I'm just hoping for the best, because getting hurt right around the biggest show of the year fucking sucks. Trust me. I know. But that's all that's going to be for today's episode of the SpectreVerse Podcast. Thank you guys once again for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, turn on that bell for notifications. Follow me on Twitter at JariSpectre. Follow me on Instagram at JariSpectre. You guys can follow the SpectreVerse as well on Twitter at the SpectreVerse. And then feel free to follow my wrestling page at Jaden Mercer, as well as the SpectreVerse on Facebook, and that is at the SpectreVerse. Until next time, we'll see you all then. Peace out.
Summon the Spectre.